Hi. What are the three most thought-provoking questions you could ask of anyone, anywhere, at any time? Well, first of all, let's talk about why you would even want to ask thought-provoking questions. These are a little tool that you could have in your back pocket for a situation that you might find yourself in. It could be if you are meeting your manager's manager. So it could be if you're meeting a senior leader. It could be if you are at a job interview. It could be if you're meeting a friend of a friend. So these questions are for when you want to have deeper discussions and you actually want that discussion to feel new for the other person. So I'm going to give you these based on everything, based on the almost 2 decades that I've been an executive coach, based on how much I enjoy interviewing people. So they're based on everything, lots of underlying material, and they're yours. Go forward, enjoy them, use them. And these are the three questions that I've found are most really thought-provoking. So I thought about them. Are they the best questions? No, not necessarily. Are they the most powerful questions? That's a coaching term. Maybe, maybe not. But they're really questions that would stop people and make them think. And the reason that it could be helpful to use these kinds of questions is you may be meeting people for the first time and they've heard the same kinds of questions before. So meeting a CEO, what do you expect for the company? What's important? What are you excited about? They've heard these kinds of questions, but what's something where they're thinking anew about the experience, and so you too can have a new experience. Now, one caveat before we get right into the questions, which is sometimes the best question, and we've discussed this in a previous broadcast, sometimes the best question is literally just an authentic, how are you? And it's just being there and listening loudly and being responsive and being present. That is sometimes the best. So with that caveat, we'll go into these. But what I really want to say is the more you're there and really listening to what a person is saying, the more you can respond. Okay, let's go to it. The most thought-provoking questions that I've found in my time being a coach and in interviewing people. I'm going to summarize them for you and then get into them specifically. And as I ask you these, my question for you is, when do you want questions at the ready? Is it when you are at the end of a job interview and people say to you, what questions do you have for us? Is it when you're meeting somebody with whom you want to have a deeper discussion? When do you want to have questions at the ready? All right, so let's get into our three most thought-provoking questions. They are the one thing, the surprised, and the seesaw question. The one thing, the surprised, and the seesaw question. Let's get into each of them. The first most thought-provoking question that you could ask is, what is the one thing? Here's how I tend to do this when I'm interviewing someone. I will often even do this at the very beginning of an interview. I'll say, we have 20 minutes together. What is the one thing you most want people to take away at the end of our time together? And that way, the guests that I'm interviewing, they'll set it right up. Because it also, if you think about these guests that have done TED Talks, that have decades of experience, it also, in a way, asks them to formulate some of their main concepts into one clear takeaway idea. So what is the one thing that you want people to take away? In a conversation with an individual person, what is the one thing that's most important for your business in the next 6 months? Something that narrows the scope and really says something specific. So that's the one thing. Next category, surprised. I love this question. I get the most unexpected answers to this question. And the question is, what has surprised you most? When I ask guests that I'm interviewing, I will surprise you. I will ask things like, you are an expert in resilience, or you're an expert in inspiration. What is the thing that surprised you most when you were doing research on this topic? And it's really fun because when someone knows a field deeply and then you ask them to drill deeper and to find out what surprised them, you just get a lot of fun, quirky, unexpected things that they've noticed. It's almost like you're going to their level of expertise and asking them to drill deeper. So what we've done now is, what's the one thing that you would like people to take away, or that's most important? And what's something that surprised you in your work on this? And now the seesaw question. So I love the seesaw question. Please imagine an actual seesaw with 2 kids on it at a playground. I love the seesaw question. Let me put the seesaw question into a specific context to start. Suppose you're at the end of a job interview and you've been interviewing with your potential hiring manager. And let's say you can feel it's been a good interview. You've covered a lot of ground. It's been really good. here's a question that you can ask at the end. At the end, you can say, thank you. And they'll say, what questions do you have? I'd like to find out from you, where do you feel in the discussion that we've had? Where do you feel that I'm a fit for this? And in a moment, I'll also ask you, where do you have hesitations? So that's why it's that seesaw. And I really recommend phrasing it in that way, which is, I'd like to ask you, where do you feel that there is a fit, if you do? And in a moment, I'm going to ask you your hesitations. And the reason that I say in a moment, and I really do listen for them to answer the where is it a fit? And then I do follow up with, what are your hesitations about me as a candidate? The reason I ask it this way, and it brings so many riches, it does let them focus on where you're a fit, and in terms of what they want to share with you about that. Now, people always have a choice. They may not even want to answer a question, and they have the choice to not answer a question, but that lets them focus on where you are a fit. And if you're at the end of an interview that's actually gone well, you absolutely want to hear where they may have hesitations. Because if you do, if you know where people have hesitations, if you need to, you can address that, or you can open it up, or you can have a more open discussion about that. So I will summarize these one more time. These are the one thing, the surprise, and the seesaw. And in summarizing them, I am going to give you 2 examples of how you can use them. So here is how you can use them, the 3 questions, the one thing, the surprise, and the seesaw question. And as I'm doing this, please let me know, what are your takeaways so far from asking these 3 types of questions? What takeaways do you have? Okay, so let's do an example. I will give an example, 2 different examples. One is when you're meeting a senior leader, and the other is, I'll just give an example about myself. I'll start with myself because it's more conversational. It's something that's very realistic and very, you can see it about me. So Senia, would you please give your one thing, your main point about everything you've been talking about in this session on the 3 most thought-provoking questions? Okay, my summary is to make it short, whatever you're doing. So I find that one thing, surprise and seesaw, those are short. The actual asking question time is short. And that's my point, that there are 3 questions that can open up the depth of a conversation, and they can each be short. That's my one thing to take away. What am I surprised by? And I'll sort of open this a little broader in terms of doing these broadcasts that go out to LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter through Periscope. I'm most surprised by how fun it is to have these interactions with you, with the people who are here on the other side. So for example, thank you, Monica. So here's Monica, and I get to have an interaction with her here. And here is Brian, and he's saying, I also want questions at the ready when the flow of conversation seems to have stalled. This is what I have been most surprised. Of course, yes, I know, Monica, I know. This is what I have been most surprised by, just how fun it is to have these back and forth conversations with you here. So it's called a broadcast, which means it's one way, but I've been surprised how fun it is to keep going back and forth. So that's my most surprised. And then my seesaw, so I and Mandy, who's behind the scenes, we actually talk about this after almost every broadcast, which is what's working the best in these broadcasts and what can be better. So if I were asking myself, I'd say what's working the best is that we come up with content that you ask us for, that I have heard you ask for over time. And what can be better is I'd like to know even more content. And I'm not trying to make this kind of silly parallel, but when you tell us what you most want to hear, then we invite those coaches and those book authors and business leaders that can best answer your questions. So that's been the what we're doing well and what we want to do even better to address what's up for you. And now switching gears. So those are 3 questions for me. Same 3 questions to a business leader. Your manager, thank you so much. A few of you are saying these questions are useful. Your manager, suppose, has just introduced you either over Zoom or someday in person to their manager whom you've never met. How can you use these questions with somebody who is a senior leader at your company or a senior partner at the customer with whom you're speaking? So let's go very, very specific. So let's say a senior leader at your company. The one thing that you can ask, the one thing question, is something along the lines of, what's the one thing that's most important for the company to execute on in the next 6 months? That's super specific. It really makes them focus on that one thing. It really, oh, I'm so delighted. Some of you are saying you can use this with your clients. A lot of them are entrepreneurs. Awesome. So glad to hear that. What's the one thing that's most important for the company to execute, or even to focus on, but to execute on over the next 6 months? That's question number one, the one thing. The surprised, I love asking this question so much. So I just have to, I'm going to take a little digression. I love questions. I'm an executive coach because I love questions. I love questions. The second question, surprised. What's been most surprising about what you've learned about leading the company in the time you've run it? I would love to know a senior leader tell me what's been most surprising for them. They might focus on the people. They might focus on the challenges of the company. I don't know what they're going to focus on. So I would love to know what's been most surprising for them. What's most surprised you? What's been most surprising for you? And then the seesaw question. So I might phrase it in the context of what's going on. I might say, if you think about the coronavirus, what is one thing that the company has done really well in these times? Extremely well. And what's an area in which the company has yet to grow? And with these big caveat, these are not questions that you pepper at people like, hey, what's been most surprising? Or, hey, what during the coronavirus, what's been one thing that the company's done really well and where it has yet to grow? These are conversational questions. So use them if they fit the conversation. I'm going to please let me know if there's something new you'd like me to share with the other viewers of this in terms of your takeaways, things that you can use. So I'm hearing some of you say you're going to use this with your clients, with entrepreneurs, that you like the thoughtfulness that goes into answering these questions. Great. So glad to hear that. And in summarizing, I will take your comments if you have them, but in summarizing, I just want to close with 3 thought-provoking questions. What's one thing that you most want us to know? And just think about a TEDx speaker. I'd love to get that 18-minute message into one thing. I would love to know that. What's one thing that surprised you the most? And then what's one thing that's gone really well? And in a moment, I'll ask you, what's one thing where there's still area to grow? Thank you so much for joining us to learn about the one thing, the surprise, and the seesaw question, and to learn about ways that you can talk with people on a deeper level. We're so delighted to see you here. We'll see you again at these sessions Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific. All the best. See you next time.